Thank you for joining me. I don't know if you've watched the lecture videos, but hopefully you have. Now, this question is not going to calculate the variances. What this question is doing is showing you how to manipulate the numbers so you can calculate what you need to actually calculate the variances. So this one is really focused on just how can we take information and manipulate it? So this doesn't calculate variances. Instead, it kind of says, play with the numbers, see how they can be used. So we've got Stillwater designed rebuilds defective units of its S12L7 kicker speaker model. During the year, Stillwater rebuilt 15,000 units. So I'm just going to note this down, 15,000 units were rebuilt during the year. Material and labor standards for the performing of the repairs were as follows. So these are the standards. And what we're doing in variance analysis is we're comparing the standard to the actual to see if there's a difference. And if the difference is large enough, we're going to investigate it, right? We're going to try and figure out why when we set a standard. And let's just step back for a second. What are standards? So what companies do is they build standard costs for their direct materials, for their direct labor, for their variable overhead, for their fixed overhead. They build standards so that they can then say, okay, this is the standard that we expect to pay, or the amount that we expect to consume building these units. And if we're using more, then we need to discover why we're using more. If it's costing us more, then we need to discover why is it costing us more. And if we're using less, why are we using less? Why is it costing us less? And through this process, it's used for performance evaluation. We can then say the standard is here and the actuals is here. And either I'm going to give you a bonus because you did really well and you reduce the cost and you reduce the amount that you use, or I'm going to penalize you because you actually increase, or I'm going to investigate why did you use more and see if this might be because of something you did. So the whole purpose of variance analysis is performance evaluation of the managers or the individuals who are in charge. So sorry, I wanted to step back. So we've built the standards here, and they say that the standard for direct material for every one kit, so this is the kit that will fix a speaker, it says direct materials are $160. So we know $160 are the one kit for direct material. We know that the direct materials also need one cabinet. And that cabinet costs $55. That's the standard, right? And then we have direct labor. And direct labor, they need 5 hours. I'm just going to put 5. I'm going to do 5, and then I'm going to do hours underneath so I can use the number 5. And that's 5 at $15 per hour. And so I'm going to put per hour. Okay, and I'm going to move these two over because this is just one and one of each of these. This one, I actually need 5 hours at $15. So you can see these are all the standard costs that are going into rebuilding these speaker models. So this is the standard again, that's not the actual. And remember, when we do performance evaluations, we're comparing the standards to the actual to see if we should pat them on the back or we should penalize them or ask them a whole bunch of questions as to what they're doing. I'm just going to center these so they're easier to see. There we go. So now it says compute the standard hours allowed for a volume of 15,000 rebuilt units. Item number 1. I know that we rebuilt 15,000 units. How many hours should that have taken us? So I take the 5 standard hours, and the number of hours that it should take us to rebuild 15,000 units is 75,000 hours. So this is the standard. Now I can say, how many hours did it actually take us? If it took us 69,000, yay, pat us on the back. But if it took us 82,000, then I need to know why. Maybe the standard was wrong. Maybe we underestimated how long it would take, but we have to discover why the standard was different than the actual. Notice that this is the standard number of hours. I'm just going to note this down, standard number of hours to rebuild 15,000 units. Let's move on to question number 2. Question number 2 says, compute the standard number of kits and cabinets allowed for a volume of 15,000 rebuilt units. So again, we've got that 15,000 rebuilt units, and they're saying, okay, how many cabinets do we need? Well, actually, I just need one cabinet. Total, of course, I'm going to take that 15 and I'm going to multiply it by 1. That's 15,000 cabinets is what I need to rebuild these. If we use 16,000, that's going to be a problem. If we use, 14,995, this is good. Similarly, they're saying how many kits do we need? Well, I still need, you can see up here, I need one kit for every rebuild. So it's one kit. And it's going to be the exact same calculation, 15,000 multiplied by the 1. This is the number of kits that I'm going to actually need in order to rebuild 15,000 cabinets. That's, again, standard. Okay? We're going to compare it to actual for performance evaluation purposes to see how well they did. So then 3 says, suppose that during the first month of the year, 15,000 standard hours were allowed for the units rebuilt. How many units were rebuilt during that first month? Well, I know it's 15,000. 15,000. They just happened to choose 15,000 hours. So 15,000 hours were allowed. And they're saying, okay, how many kits were you able to rebuild? How many kits would you be able to rebuild if you had 15,000 labor hours? Well, we know that every kit takes 5 hours to rebuild. So we can calculate how many speakers would be rebuilt during that time period. Standard. We should have been able to rebuild 3,000 units rebuilt if we had 15,000 hours standard. Now, don't forget, we're going to take those standards and then we're going to take the actual things that happen. We're going to compare the two and we're going to say, okay, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing?